The other thing I want to just talk about as we go through this is people that are on a cusp. So a cusp in astrology means that you're 3 days within the change point of a sign. So, and every month that changes slightly depending on the person. So you can have a person that's born on the cusp between Aquarius and Capricorn. And so they're going to kind of have some qualities both ways. And it's a little tricky to translate sometimes because you might find that you start to explain this Saturn energy from a really grounded Saturn perspective rather than an Aquarian perspective, and they'll be like, oh, I don't really do that like that. Okay, so, but they're sitting on that cusp, and so they have a little bit one way, a little bit the other way. And when it comes to astrology, again, in the Vedic system can back up a person's birthday by about 2 to 3 days. So if you're on the cusp, exactly, in the Vedic system, and you're between Aquarius and, let's say you're an Aquarius born right at 0 degrees of Aquarius, but you're right on that cusp with Capricorn, the Vedic system would back you up a couple of days, which means you would actually be a pure Capricorn. So I'm giving you this fuzzy area because it can get a little fuzzy. So you want to kind of go, okay, I realize that I'm in that discriminating kind of place right here, but I want to pay attention to it. So for this, you know, you've got a person who has a soul of positive mind. So both of these people are a soul of positive mind. And people say one of the things that kind of bothers them about numerology is just that you can have this discrepancy, that you can have an Aquarius and a Capricorn and have exactly the same numbers. But there's positive and negative sides to each of the numbers, and it's the nuances and how we move with something that makes it more interesting and makes it the flavor. So again, you could have an Aquarius that's turned that karma into a victim place of humility, and you could have a Capricorn that's turned it into a 10. And so they're being very powerful and forceful. So you have to look at the person's energy field a little bit to see which way they're going, and at the same time kind of see what's functioning and what's not functioning. But you can always rely upon the numbers, that regardless, even if the Capricorn is doing power, that Capricorn still needs to learn humility. Even if the Aquarius is being a victim, they still need to learn humility. You cannot be a victim and be humble. You don't have to be a victim and be humble. See, there's these funny little edges. So, so that's why I just wanted to address the cusp energy, because it really can fiddle with it a little bit. And so an example would be Madonna and me. So Madonna and me are actually born on the same birthday. Now we're born 2 different years apart, so she's 2 years older than me. But it's ironic, some of the similarities. Okay, so the similarities are that when I was in New York on scholarship to Juilliard, she was in New York at that exact same time. I was on scholarship. She was a starving musician, singer, trying to survive. So it's interesting that we were drawn to the same place at the same time, drawn to, like, she's being an artist, I'm being an artist. She's obviously a very amazing dancer at the same time as she's a singer, and she's got all these other talents too. I don't pretend to be a singer, but I love to dabble in singing, but I don't pretend to be that good at that. And then as she's gone through her life, there's been different shifts and changes that have happened, but she and I have some real similar qualities. Like, I saw her on a television thing recently, and I don't pretend to know her at all, but she's very outspoken like me, and she's very forceful like me, and she has a strong opinion like me, and so we have this similar thing we're sharing. Also, again, like I mentioned earlier, it's like I've had some nuns that were born on my birthday, but amazingly, they were also very outspoken. They were also very artistic. They also took huge risks and kind of left home early, and they also had certain patterns related to feeling abandoned by their father. I mean, it's amazing how many similarities there are. So, you know, people get frustrated and they say, well, that can't fit for everybody. And I'm like, it does, kind of, in a weird way. Now, I might have taken this nuance and gone this way, and this nuance and gone that way, but Madonna, as an example, is obviously a much more famous person than me by a long shot. but she's very spiritual. She's into Kabbalah, which is numbers, right? So here I am teaching numerology, and she's very into Kabbalah, and she's very into mysticism. So there's this thing that we're both interested in. You know, we're doing it in our own way, and we're coming at it from different angles, but I think it's sort of fascinating. So my answer is yes, the numbers apply. The next thing I want to just tap into a little bit here is twins. So twins become an interesting situation because obviously they're born the same day. But anybody who's dealt with twins knows that you can have twins that are exactly the same. They wear the same thing, they move the same way, they talk the same way. I had a friend of mine in high school that she had sisters that were twins, and I was the only person who could tell them apart besides the family. I mean, it's like no one else could tell them apart. I totally knew that Sharon, that's Karen. I mean, I totally knew that they were, but nobody else could do that. So they could fiddle with the teachers and play games and stuff, and I would be like, wait a second, aren't you supposed to be in that? You know, kind of like it's a funny thing. So twins are tricky because twins can either be exactly the same, or they can be completely radically different. Now, obviously, fraternal twins are going to take a radically different approach to the numbers. Identical twins can do the same, but they could also be totally different. I mean, so you can have identical twins that, you know, one wants to have fuchsia mohawk and the other one wants to be the ballerina. I mean, you can actually totally have them different. So the numbers still apply, but they might have twisted a number one way or twisted a number another way. So what's tricky about it is when I'm doing a reading, and I have had this, that I've had one twin in front of me and they say, well, by the way, I have a twin brother, right? And so then I have to sort it. I'm like, okay, are you more this way or are you more this way? And they'll go, oh, I'm more this way. And then is the other one the other way? And you have to actually sort it because you honestly don't know, because it, you know, they could be doing this number the same, that number different, this number different, that number the same. I mean, it can mix up any which way. So it's a little entertaining when it comes to that. So, so yes, the numbers still apply, though somebody may have pulled it one way or the other energetically. When we're dealing again with the karma of one, we're dealing with that humility factor, being that authentic self. And there is a way to be humble and powerful at the same time. So again, you could have a person who is a boss and they have an employee screaming at them and they have a karma of 1. So the boss has a karma of 1. Yes, you could scream at them and be Alexander the Great and turn that into a 10 and be a pain in the butt. Or you could actually stand your ground and be very authentic and say, wow, I totally get you're really angry and it's really hard for me to hear you and stay open to you when you're screaming at me. So what is it that you need from me in order to know that I'm hearing you, and how can we work this out together? So notice that person's being humble, they're being authentic, they're saying I'm having trouble staying open, but they're not backing down off their power in any way. They're still being very powerful, but without collapsing into a victim place. So that would be a positive example, okay? Now, when we get to, let's change the karma of 1 to a karma of 2. We'll just keep all those numbers there just because it's interesting for giggles' sake. Okay. So, now what you've got here is you've got an Aquarius, and you've got, oh, that doesn't work. I have to change this. Like, we'll change the 3 to, because there's no 30 in the second month of the year. So let's do the 20th or something. Yeah, let's do the 20th. That'll be easier. Okay, then that'll change that. Okay, so let's do 2. Let's do 20. So then this will be a 2. And let's see, we've got 19, that's right, 19. Is that still a 10? So 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 is still a 10. Okay, all right. So, so what we've got with this one is you've got an Aquarius with a karma of 2. The karma of 2 is the karma of critical mind. So it means they're working on critical mind. They're working on negativity. They're working on turning critical mind into discernment and awareness without it being critical or judgmental or rigid or restrictive. So, the karma of 2 again is the bullshit detector karma. So an Aquarius is gifted and cursed with a brain like a steel trap that is going to be the bullshit detector in some way. This Pisces also has that same pattern. Because they're born in the second month, when most Pisces are born in the third month, this tells you that they're an older soul Pisces and that they've already done that. Now, they say you start at Aries, which is the baby sign of the zodiac. You go to Taurus, which is the toddler. You work your way around to Leo, which is the adolescent, and you work your way all the way to Pisces, which is considered the old man. Once you do a full round of the zodiac, they actually say you can pop anywhere you want. Okay, so with this particular pattern, and anybody who is a sign but their karma number is the month previous, so that means that they're an older soul version of that sign. So why this is so significant for Pisces is that Pisces is the old man in the zodiac, and Pisces are trying to complete all the leftover karma from all the leftover lifetimes while they're in Pisces. So Pisces is a hard sign to complete, so I always have great compassion for the Pisces because they're incredibly wise, but they're so bogged down in the karma. So it's like a salmon going up a stream. And the Pisces are the salmon, and they have to get past the fishermen and the bears and the nets and the waterfalls and the dams, and there's always this obstacle course that they have to get past, and the water is always pushing against them and trying to push them backwards. So with this particular Pisces, this Pisces has actually navigated some of that watery stuff, and they've probably done Pisces before, and they're in sort of a superior position because now they've got the Aquarian expanded mind of an Aquarius, but they're a Pisces. So I think of it like air with water. So it's like a flying fish. So it's a fish, but it can pop up every once in a while and then get in the water again and pop up and get in the water again. So this gives them an advantage, obviously. So a fish, if it can jump out of the water to avoid the predator, it's really helpful. So this gives this particular Pisces an advantage. Now, again, it's actually a great advantage, but sometimes to a sign it doesn't feel like an advantage because Pisces is ruled by Neptune. Neptune is the planet of illusion, and so Pisces like to live in their illusion, but with this clarity of going in the air, they don't get that opportunity to be an illusion very much, and so illusions can be very fun and they can be really enjoyable, but this particular Pisces is not going to get that luxury, and it'll feel a little like, oh, you know, why do I always have to see the whole truth kind of thing? And I'm like, because you're the bullshit detector karma. That's the reason right there. So, so when you're dealing with this karma, if we're translating it through an Aquarius, the Aquarius karma, they're gifted and cursed with this mind. They are working on learning about their left brain. And if you've ever gotten to know any Aquariuses that are born in the second month, they're very, very bright. But they're sometimes not book-learned bright, okay? So they sometimes don't get through school, but they're really bright. I mean, they've got this incredible quality in there. So sometimes the hardest thing to get an Aquarius through is school. Getting them through school, getting them to get a degree can be really challenging. So, as an Aquarius, they have to be careful with this particular double two pattern. They have to be careful not to be too overly critical and too negative, because it's like now they've got a soul of critical mind and a karma of critical mind. You got two critical minds there. It's like you could be your own worst enemy really fast. Your brain is going to remember every mistake you've ever made ever in your whole life and can use it as a weapon against yourself if you're not careful. So getting them to kind of let it go, you got to just drop it, you've got to let it go, is really hard for them because their brain is going to loop and loop and loop and loop on that criticism or where they made a mistake or where they didn't do it right. Whereas with the Pisces, now Pisces is again a sign that is a water sign ruled by Neptune, but again it's got a karma of that discernment, so it's not quite as negative, if that makes any sense. That doesn't mean it's not negative to them in their head, but comparatively they usually are a little less negative on themselves. So what happens is a Pisces will have a tendency to really like, well, I trust my mind, you know, so rather than being so critical, they can oftentimes be very like, well, I just know that this is what works for me. It's got a calmer place because they're a wiser position, because they've been given this advantage, okay? So, okay, now let's do the three.